You know that feeling when everything seems perfect until it isn't? The kind of moment where one text, one late-night call, or one unexpected detail flips your world upside down. That's exactly where this story begins. Meet Sarah and Jake, a couple everyone admired. They had the kind of love people joked about, calling it too good to be true. And maybe, just maybe, it was because when Jake left for what should have been just another routine work trip, neither of them could have guessed it would unravel everything they'd built. Business travel was nothing new for Jake. As a sales executive, he was used to late flights, hotel rooms, and the occasional lonely dinner. But this trip was different. The texts came slower. The calls felt rushed. And then there was Helena, his new coworker, who seemed to be in every photo. From the conference, always just a little too close. Smiling just a little too brightly. At first, Sarah brushed it off. Work friends were normal, right? But when Jake returned home, something had shifted. He was distant, distracted, like his mind was still somewhere else. Then came the notification. A single Instagram like from Jake on one of Lena's old vacation photos. A photo posted months before they'd even met. Why would he be scrolling that far back unless Sarah's stomach dropped? The pieces were there, but she didn't want to see them. Was this just paranoia, or was the man she trusted hiding something? The more she dug, the more the cracks showed. Deleted messages, unexplained charges at a restaurant she'd never heard of, a receipt for 2 glasses of wine when Jake had sworn he was alone. But the real twist, this wasn't just about an affair, because Lena had secrets of her own ones that tied back to Jake in ways Sarah never saw coming. By the time she realized what was really going on, it was too late to unsee it. The betrayal ran deeper than she could have imagined. And the worst part, Jake had no idea she knew. So what happens when the person you love becomes a stranger? When business trips stop being about work and start being about lies? Sarah's about to find out. Trust me, you won't believe where this story goes. Next. Stay tuned, because this is just the beginning. Sarah had always prided herself on trusting her gut, but now, that same instinct was tearing her apart. She tried to shake off the suspicion, telling herself she was overreacting. After all, Jake had never given her a reason not to trust him before. But then she remembered the way he'd hesitated when she asked about Lena, the way his voice tightened just slightly, like he was choosing his words too carefully. Late one night, while Jake was asleep, Sarah found herself scrolling through his phone, something she'd never done before. Her hands trembled as she tapped through his messages, her heart pounding like she was breaking into a vault. Most of his chats were harmless work updates, group texts with friends. But then she saw it, a thread with Lena, buried under a mountain of emoji reactions and inside jokes. The messages themselves were innocent enough, mostly about meetings and deadlines, but the frequency was strange. Why were they texting so much outside of work, and why had Jake never mentioned it? The next morning, Sarah decided to test the waters. Over coffee, she casually brought up Lena. "You two seem to get along well," she said, forcing a smile. Jake's spoon clinked against his mug a little too loudly. "Yeah, she's cool, good at her job," he replied, eyes fixed on his phone. Too quick, too vague. Sarah's chest tightened. Meanwhile, Lena's social media told its own story. Sarah hadn't meant to stalk her, but once she started, she couldn't stop. Photos of Lena at high-end restaurants, lounging in hotel pools, always dressed too impressive and at corporate events. And then there was the bracelet. In one of Jake's recent trip photos, Lena was wearing a delicate silver chain with a tiny heart charm. Sarah had seen that same bracelet in their credit card statement a few weeks back at purchase. Jake had brushed off as a gift for his sister. Except his sister's birthday wasn't for months. The more Sarah pieced together, the more the timeline didn't add up. Jake's sudden overtime at the office. The way he'd started dressing sharper, like he was trying to impress someone. Even his calling something new. Something she hadn't picked out for him. Small things, but together, they painted a picture she didn't want to see. Then came the final red flag. A missed call from an unknown number while Jake was in the shower. Sarah almost ignored it until she noticed the area code, the same city where Jake had last traveled for work. Her finger hovered over the callback button. Who would be calling him from there? A client, or someone else entirely? But, before she could decide, Jake's phone buzzed again, this time with a text. The preview flashed on the screen, just long enough for Sarah to catch 3 words that sent a chill down her spine. "We need to talk." The message disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, locked behind a passcode Sarah didn't have. Now, she was left with more questions than answers. Who sent that? What did they need to talk about? And most importantly, what else was Jake hiding? One thing was clear. This wasn't just about a coworker anymore. There was something bigger going on. Something Jake was desperate to keep buried. And Sarah, she was done playing naive. If he wouldn't tell her the truth, she'd find it herself. Matter where it led, because secrets have a way of surfacing. And when they do, nothing stays the same. Sarah stared at Jake's phone, her mind racing. That text, "We need to talk," could mean anything. But the way it appeared and vanished, like a secret Jake was desperate to keep, made her stomach twist. She placed the phone back on the counter just as the bathroom door opened, steam rolling out behind Jake as he stepped into the hallway, a towel slung over his shoulder. "Everything okay?" he asked, glancing at her. Sarah forced a smile. "Yep, just thinking about dinner," but her voice sounded off, even to her own ears. Jake frowned slightly but didn't push it. That was the thing about lies, they lived in the silences, in the things left unsaid. Later that night, Sarah did something she never thought she'd do. She created a fake Instagram account, just a blank profile with a generic name, and searched for Lena. Scrolling through her posts felt invasive, but she couldn't stop. Then she saw it, a photo from 2 weeks ago, tagged at a restaurant in the city Jake had visited. The caption read, "Business trips are better with good company." The photo showed Lena grinning at the camera, a half-empty wine glass in front of her, and just at the edge of the frame, a man's hand resting on the tabla hand wearing Jake's watch. Sarah's breath caught. It could still be a coincidence, right? Maybe they'd just met for a work dinner. But then why hadn't Jake mentioned it? Why had he lied about being stuck in meetings all night? The next morning, Sarah called in sick to work. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to find them sitting at her desk. She drove to Jake's office building, parking across the street where she could watch the entrance without being seen. Hours passed with nothing unusual, just employees coming and going, the rhythm of a normal workday. Then, around lunchtime, Jake and Lena walked out together. They didn't touch, didn't even stand too close, but the way they laughed, easy, familiar, made Sarah's chest ache. She followed them at a distance, her pulse hammering as they turned into a quiet cafe. Through the window, she watched as Jake pulled out Lena's chair, the way he used to do for her early in their relationship. Then, the unthinkable. Lena reached across the table and brushed something off Jake's collar, her fingers lingering, just a second too long. Sarah's vision blurred. She wanted to storm in, to demand the truth right then and there. But something held her back. What if she was wrong? What if there was an explanation? Or worse, what if she was right, and confronting him now would only make him better at hiding it? As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. A notification from their shared cloud storage. A new photo had been uploaded. It was Jake, taken just minutes ago, sitting across from Lena at that cafe. Only Sarah hadn't taken it. Someone else had. And the caption, "Sent from an unknown number," made her blood run cold. "You're not the only one watching who sent this." How did they know she was here? And if someone else was following Jake, what else did they know? Sarah's hand shook. As she slid into her car, her thoughts spiraling. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. There was something darker at play, a game where she didn't know the rules. And the worst part, Jake might not just be the cheater, he might be the one in danger. Sarah sat frozen in her car, the phone gripped so tight her knuckles turned white. That photo, that terrifying message, it changed everything. Someone was watching. Someone knew. But who? And why? Her first thought was Lena. Was this some twisted power play, a way to taunt her? But the message didn't feel like something a jealous coworker would send. It felt calculated, threatening. She drove home in a daze, every shadow on the road making her jump. When she walked into their apartment, everything looked normal, their framed photos on the wall, Jake's shoes by the door, but it all felt foreign now, like a stage set for a life that didn't exist anymore. That night, Jake came home late, again, smelling faintly of cologne and something else, whiskey. His smile didn't reach his eyes when he saw her. "Hey, you okay? You look pale." Sarah wanted to scream, to throw the photo in his face and demand answers, but that mysterious warning kept echoing in her mind. "You're not the only one watching." So she forced a smile. "Just tired, long day." The next morning, while Jake was in the shower, she did something desperate. She logged into his email, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Nothing unusual in his inbox. But then she checked the trash folder. Deleted 3 days ago, a confirmation email for a hotel reservation for last weekend in the same city as his business trip, a room for two. Her vision swam. This was proof, concrete, undeniable proof. But before she could process it, another email caught her eye. This one from a sender called NS. The subject line, "Payment received." The body, just 2 words, "Keep quiet." What the hell was this? Her hands were shaking so badly she almost missed the sound of the shower turning off. She quickly closed the laptop just as Jake stepped out, towel around his waist. "You're up early," he said, eyeing her. Sarah's mouth went dry. There was something different about him, a tension in his jaw, a guarded look she'd never seen before. Was he scared? Or hiding something far worse than an affair? Then his phone rang. Jake glanced at the screen and his face went rigid. He rejected the call fast, but not before Sarah saw the name NS. The room spun. None of this made sense. The hotel, the payments. That ominous warning. Was Jake in trouble? Was she? She needed to think, but her thoughts were chaos. Then her own phone buzzed, a new message from an unknown number, a photo attachment. Her blood turned to ice as she opened it. It was a grainy surveillance image of her, sitting at her kitchen table right now. The message below read, "Stop digging, or he dies." And in the corner of the photo, barely visible, blurry outline of a gun on the table. Sarah's breath stopped. This wasn't about an affair anymore. This was about survival. Sarah's phone clattered to the floor, the screen still displaying that chilling image. The room tilted as she gripped the counter for balance. Someone was in their home. Someone had been watching them, not just following Jake, but watching her. Right now. Jake turned at the sound, his brow furrowing. Babe, what's wrong? She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The photo proved they weren't just being watched, they were being hunted. And that gun on the table. Was it a threat? A warning, or was someone in their apartment at this very moment? Her eyes darted to the shadowed hallway, the slightly ajar closet door. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Sarah, seriously, Jake started, but then his phone buzzed again. His face went pale as he read the message. Whatever it said made his hand shake. Who's NS? The question burst out of her before she could stop it. Jake's head snapped up, his expression shifting from fear to something worse, guilt. How do you know that name? The air between them crackled with tension. For a moment, neither moved. Then a loud knock at the door made them both jump. 3 sharp raps, paused, then 2 more, a pattern, a code. Jake's entire body tensed. Don't answer that, he whispered, stepping between her and the door. But it was too late. The knob turned slowly, the lock being engaged. Then a click as the deadbolt released itself. Sarah's pulse pounded in her ears. That wasn't possible unless... The door swung open to reveal Lena standing in the hallway. But it wasn't the polished, smiling Lena from Jake's photos. This Lena had wild eyes, a bruise forming on her cheek, and a USB drive clutched in her trembling hand. They know, she gasped, her voice raw. They know you have it, Jake, and they're coming. Jake lunged forward, grabbing Lena's arm. What did you do? Before she could answer, the power went out. The apartment plunged into darkness. Outside, car doors slammed. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairwell. Sarah backed against the wall, her mind racing. None of this was about an affair. It never had been. Lena shoved the USB into Jake's hand. The files are all here. The ones you stole from. A gunshot rang out from the parking lot below. Glass shattered as a bullet tore through their living room window. Down. Jake tackled both women to the floor as another shot whizzed overhead. Sarah's face pressed against cold hardwood as reality crashed over her. Her boyfriend wasn't just cheating, he was running. And whatever he'd taken, these people were willing to kill to get it back. The pounding footsteps reached their door. The knob rattled. And in the terrifying silence before the door burst open, Jake whispered 3 words that changed everything. Trust no one. Then the world exploded into noise and motion as their hunters finally caught up with them. The door burst open with a crash, splintering wood flying across the room. Sarah barely had time to register the dark figures rushing in before Jake yanked her behind the couch. Lena scrambled to the other side of the room, her eyes wide with terror. Give us the drive, Jake, a cold voice demanded. Sarah peeked over the couch to see 3 armed men in black tactical gear spreading through their apartment. The ledger tall man with a scar running down his cheek kept his gun trained on them. This doesn't have to get messy. Jake's grip on Sarah's arm tightened. It's over, Marcus. The files are already out. Sarah's mind reeled. What files? What had Jake gotten them into? Marcus laughed, a harsh grating sound. You really think sending copies to your little reporter friend would save you? He nodded to one of his men, who dragged Lena forward by her hair. She cried out as he pressed a gun to her temple. Last chance. Sarah felt Jake tense beside her. Then, in one fluid motion, he lunged not at the armed men, but at the lamp on the end table. The room plunged into darkness as he smashed the bulb. Chaos erupted. Gunfire lit up the dark in blinding flashes. Sarah dropped to the floor as bullets tore through the walls above her. She heard grunts, the sickening thud of fists meeting flesh. Then a crash as someone went through the coffee table. A hand grabbed her wrist. Run. Jake's voice hissed in her ear. He shoved the USB drive into her hand and pushed her toward the bedroom. There's a fire escape, go. But now, Sarah. She stumbled through the dark, her heart hammering against her ribs. Just as she reached the bedroom window, the apartment lights flickered back on. What she saw froze her in place. Jake stood facing Marcus, but something was different. His posture, his expression even, his voice sounded colder than she'd ever heard it. Enough games, Jake said, pulling a badge from his pocket and flashing it at Marcus. You're done. Sarah's breath caught. All this time. Marcus snarled and raised his gun. But Jake was faster. A single shot rang out, and Marcus dropped. The other men froze as police sirens wailed outside, red and blue lights flooding the apartment through the broken windows. Jake turned to Sarah, his eyes pleading. I wanted to tell you. A gunshot cracked from the hallway. Jake jerked forward, his blood bloomed on his shoulder. Behind him, Lena stood shaking, a smoking pistol in her hand, a terrifying expression morphing into something darker. Sorry, she sneered. The cartel pays better. Sarah didn't know. She held the heavy USB drive in Lena's head. It struck her temple with a single flash, buying just enough time for Jake to take the Lena and SWAT glasses. Hours later, no one's been waiting there. Sarah finally got it. Jake wasn't just a traveling salesman. He'd been deep undercover for years, gathering evidence fast. Then she remembered the USB drive and radio. While the nurse's back was turned, Sarah suddenly tapped her pocket, feeling the hard outline of the duplicate drive she made before coming to the hospital. Find his genuine message included evidence that could bring down the entire operation was still safe. The commotion erupted down the hall, shouting running footsteps. The nurse's head snapped up just as federal agents burst into the room. Everything froze. In the chaos, Sarah reached through and grabbed the nurse's wrist, twisting it until the woman cried out, "What are you really doing?" The nurse's arms flashed. You have no idea what you're up against. She snapped in front of the agents and shot her eyes at the nurse and left. "You'll take it from here," she told Sarah. "Jake's going to be okay. We got here just in time." Hours later, in a secure government facility, Sarah sat by Jake's bedside as he slowly woke up. His first words were, "Did we win?" Sarah squeezed his hand.